Remember the thrilling snap as you slid a floppy disk into your computer, followed by the whirring click that meant your files were safe? At least, you hoped they were. For anyone who lived through the rise of home computing, that little square of plastic and metal was the key to a new digital world. The unmistakable feel of sliding back the metallic cover, the powdery scent of office drawers crowded with color-coded disks, and those handwritten labels, often just cryptic enough to be a mystery years later, all bring back a time when saving your work took courage and a steady hand. Floppy disks, with their modest 1.44 megabytes of space, held our first attempts at writing pixelated family photos and, for the lucky few, a secret game or two hidden in the back of a desk. Remember waiting as your favorite program loaded, the drive gently whirring beside you? Or that dreaded disk error? Message threatening to erase hours of effort? Floppy disks were more than tech, they were symbols of discovery. As we dust off these memories, you might just find yourself longing for the soft, reassuring clack of yesteryear's data. Ready to revisit that iconic era? To truly appreciate the floppy disks of the 1990s, let's roll back the clock to their inception, a time when computers filled entire rooms and ordinary folks considered anything portable if you could get it into the back seat of a car. In the early 1970s, IBM engineers, faced with the challenge of finding a convenient way to load microcode into massive mainframes, unveiled a new kind of data storage, the 8-inch floppy disk. This was a far cry from the neatly labeled 3.5-inch blue, black, or sometimes neon discs we remember from the 90s, but it was revolutionary in its day. Before the floppy, data was stored on bulky reels of magnetic tape or punch cards, imposing relics that demanded precision and patience. With the arrival of the floppy disk, suddenly information could slip into your briefcase or even your jacket pocket. By the late 1970s and early 80s, technology makers, Apple, Commodore, IBM, each adopted their own flavors of these flexible wonders. The 5.25-inch floppy, introduced in 1976, became the workhorse for the burgeoning era of home computers. Its odd, square shape with a circular window seemed almost futuristic, yet now feels impossibly quaint. Can you recall the satisfying way the thin diskette flexed when inserted, or that moment you realized it would bend? But only so much. Early computer enthusiasts treasured these disks the way we once cherished a favorite vinyl album. They were both delicate and, in the right hands, utterly reliable. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In those days, the concept of disk errors was as common as morning coffee. If you've ever gotten a heart-stopping warning that your disk was unreadable, you're not alone. Odd as it sounds, sometimes blowing on the disk or gently swabbing the exposed inner circle with a cotton cloth seemed like a technician's magic trick. And yet, these small sacrifices paved the way for the data-driven culture we inherited in the 1990s. Surprisingly, the word floppy actually comes from the earliest models. Those bendable 8-inch and 5.25-inch disks were indeed floppy. It wasn't until the 1980s that Sony introduced the sturdier, snap-shut 3.5-inch version most of us now picture when we hear floppy disk. These microdisks encased in hard plastic with a spring-loaded metal shutter felt downright high-tech in comparison. Did you know that to ensure the secrecy of early technology, IBM's specs for the 8-inch floppy disk were shared only within a tight-knit engineering circle, and the original patent's technical drawing had to be deciphered by hand? As the 90s dawned, the landscape shifted again. Personal computers were creeping into more and more households, schools, and offices. Microsoft Windows 3.1, Apple Macintosh classics, and countless aspiring home coders leaned heavily on that reliable 3.5-inch disk. A standard diskette held just 1.44 megabytes, barely a single digital photograph by today's standards. Yet in the early 90s, that was sufficient to store term papers, bank statements, address books, and even a few rounds of Tetris or Oregon Trail. Imagine explaining to a grandchild today that an entire school project, complete with graphics, easily fit on a piece of media so light you forgot it was in your pocket. Of course, not everyone was quick to adopt the new form factor. Throughout the early 1990s, you might remember seeing both 5.25-inch and 3.5-inch disk drives side by side on desktops, competing for desk space. That brief moment of coexistence speaks volumes about the pace of technological change and our very human tendency to hang on to the familiar just a little longer. Were you among those who were hesitant to transition, perhaps keeping a drawer full of old floppies just in case? Or maybe you boldly embraced the new design, trading in stacks of fragile sleeves for the sturdy click of plastic cases. What's more astonishing is that despite their modest capacity, these tiny disks still managed to change how we thought about ownership and movement of digital information. For the first time, you could take your work, your files, even your entertainment, from one computer to another with no more than a gentle snap. In fact, the word portable in computing circles owes much to the floppy disk era, a kind of quiet revolution that slipped by in packages barely larger than a drink coaster. Here's another tidbit that might surprise you. In the early days, floppy disks weren't cheap. A single 8-inch disk could run as much as $5 to $10 a piece, a small fortune if you intended to back up your entire hard drive. By contrast, prices for the more familiar 3.5-inch version dropped rapidly through the late 80s and early 90s, eventually reaching well under $1 each. It wasn't uncommon to receive free floppies tucked inside computer magazines, like miniature treasures for the enterprising home user. By the time we reached the peak of the floppy's popularity, an entire cottage industry had sprung up around creative labeling. Stickers, markers, even easy peel color tabs flooded the market, making it possible to catalog digital life as never before. Do you remember writing out resume or family photos in careful block letters, sometimes squeezing far more information onto one label than the disk itself could actually hold? That small act of labeling gave us a sense of control and ownership that's hard to replicate in today's sea of faceless digital files. The cultural impact of the floppy disk was subtle but profound. School computer labs were abuzz with the soft shuffle of diskettes. Office meetings ended with a supervisor handing you the disk for next week's report. And who could forget the little sliding notch you taped up or down to protect your data, a simple switch that stood between your work and digital disaster? If you ever had a favorite sticker for good luck before a big project, you weren't alone. Some even wrapped their most precious disks in plastic wrap to shield them from everyday hazards, a coffee spill, a stray magnet, even the family cat. But as history loves to remind us, no innovation exists in a vacuum. Alongside the spread of floppies came the rise of the computer magazine, bulletin board systems, and a new generation of tech-savvy kids trading games and sharing tips after school, usually right before teachers kicked them out of the lab for the day. Those simple stickers often carried more secrets and friendship than the data inside. Have you ever discovered an old floppy in a box and puzzled over what teenage you might have hidden within? As the 90s advanced, the humble floppy disk became an icon, recognized everywhere from office cubicles to sitcom punchlines. It was not only a tool for work and study, but a silent witness to the changing tides of technology, society, and culture. But if history taught us anything, it's that even the most cherished inventions don't stay on top forever. Just as the 5.25-inch disc faded into nostalgia, the trusty 3.5-inch version was about to face challenges from new and unexpected competitors, and the race to fit more, save better, and share faster was about to begin. Are you ready to dig deeper into the dazzling advances that defined the floppy's golden years in the 1990s? Let's explore just how this clever little disk kept pace with our skyrocketing digital lives. As we close the lid on our journey through the world of 1990s floppy disks, it's remarkable how something so small and unassuming could play such a significant role in shaping our everyday lives. Throughout the era, those unmistakable 3.5-inch squares stood at the crossroads of home, work, and play, helping us usher in a new age of personal computing with equal parts excitement and trepidation. We traced the floppy's roots from the early, bendable prototypes to the sturdy, color-coded disks many of us relied on for everything from storing precious family photos to tackling term papers and spreadsheets. We remembered the careful labeling of each disk, the sense of anticipation as software loaded, and the silent dread of seeing the words "disk error" flash across a monitor. These moments stand out as hallmarks of an era where technology was both a little mysterious and entirely hands-on, each disk holding not just data, but a piece of our hopes, frustrations, and triumphs. Beyond their practical uses, floppy disks became symbols of our first steps into the digital future. They made transporting files possible, taught us the value of backups, and turned humble desk drawers into treasure troves of creativity and curiosity. Office chatter about who's got the company presentation disk, the collective pride of a school project saved from the brink, and the genuine joy of swapping games with friends. These are not just technical memories, but human ones, telling the story of a generation learning to navigate the new frontier of personal technology. Looking back, it's almost charming how we agonized over limited storage, carefully swapping disks mid-install, or safeguarding our prized collection from stray magnets and sunlight. Those tactile experiences, the satisfying clack, inserting a disk, the feel of the sliding shutter, the sound of the drive's gentle whir, are sensory memories that linger longer than any file could. Floppy disks remind us that progress isn't just about speed and capacity. It's also about the journey, the shared experiences, and the small rituals that anchor us to a particular place and time. How did those little plastic squares leave their mark on your story? Was it a favorite computer game, a long-lost document, or maybe a handwritten label that always makes you smile even decades later? I invite you to share your own floppy disk memories in the comments, whether it's a story of success, a near disaster, or even a funny mishap from those early days of home computing. Don't forget to like this video if you found yourself grinning at the thought of dusting off old disk boxes, and make sure to subscribe for more trips down memory lane. If you know friends or family who'd enjoy reminiscing about the days of swapping disks and decoding handwritten labels, send this their way. It just might spark a conversation you haven't had in years. There's plenty more nostalgia to come, so stay tuned for our next adventure into the technology, toys, and traditions that shaped our world. Till then, keep those memories safe. After all, even if the old disks won't read anymore, the stories stored in our hearts are always just a click away.